Good evening. City of Taft Planning Commission is meeting. We have a special meeting agenda today, Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. City Hall Council Chamber, 209 East Kern Street, Taft, California. City of Taft Planning Commission meetings are being held in person with full capacity seating and are live streamed at https://www.youtube.com/user/City of Taft. Public comment can be made in person and can be received per the following. Written comments may be dropped off in the drop box in front of City Hall. Comments may be emailed to the city at the city of clerk at cityoftaft.org. Made by phone to the city clerk's office at 661-763-1222. Public comments not made in person will be accepted up until 1 hour before the meeting, and any comments received will be read into the record. So we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll go ahead and do the invocation since we don't have a person here to do it.
Deal. I shall do the flag salute. It's hiding from the camera. All right, so flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please bow your heads.
It was. I couldn't hide by the plant.
Father, I thank you for your presence here with us today. I ask that you guide our deliberations and bring us to proper conclusions. In your son's name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, roll call when you're ready.
Chairman Livingston.
Here.
Vice Chairman Schertz.
Here.
Commissioner Dowden.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
And Commissioner Orton has maybe.
Okay. Normally, we would be looking for public comments or citizen requests. Item 1, we have none at this moment, so we will move on to item 2, the minutes of our previous meeting.
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned and approved. Second, please, roll call vote.
Commissioner Dowden.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schertz.
Yes.
Chairman Livingston.
Yes. Okay, we're moving on to more review here. We've got the Planning Commission review of zoning ordinance amendments to sections related to unit size requirements, setbacks, definition of family, and residential care facilities. Planning Director?
Thank you, Chairman Livingston. As you mentioned, we're looking at another set of zoning ordinance amendments that were derived out of the housing element preparation process. And keep in mind this section, which is in the housing element, is referred to as the removal of constraints, but it's basically what do we need to change in our zoning code and or general plan to make more housing available in the city. But so there's 16 different ones. We're on to the next 4 programs: 5J, K, M, and N out of the housing element. And the topics that they cover is reducing or removing the minimum unit size requirements, amending the ordinance for front yard setback requirements, and section M is definition of family, and N, as in Nancy, is regarding residential care facilities. So I'll go through each of these. For program 5J in reducing or removing unit size requirements in the draft resolution that was provided. The table for, actually just go over the whole land use table, which is page 4 of the draft resolution. We're not acting on it tonight, but I do have some items here for you where so for the unit size requirement, it's the last line item in the table from setbacks and lot sizes and the like. Actually missed one there. Sorry about that. So at the bottom there, reducing the unit size in the RS and R1 zones, which are essentially large lot and your standard R1 single family zone districts, down to 850. That matches the minimum single family unit requirement that's in our manufactured home section of the code. So it's providing at least a little bit smaller, so if it's, somebody wants a two-bedroom manufactured home or stick-built one, they could go that small. And then drop the R2, which is essentially your duplex zone, and the R3 zone, which is the multifamily apartment zone, down to 400 square feet, which was that upper end of the single-room occupancy that we talked about last time. So it's kind of that dividing line of if you're below, we'll be considering some of those units or SROs, and then above that is a suggested minimum unit size when someone comes in with studios or apartments, whatever it may be. Further up on the table, there are some other changes where a little more definite on there's a cul-de-sac or knuckle lot, which is basically the 90-degree change on a street, that curved frontage be at least 35 feet on that curved distance. It wasn't overly specified. And then below that, the front yard setbacks, I did bump them up a little bit, but it's referring to the actual occupied space of the home. So like if a living room or bedroom's all the way up at the front, I've adjusted it where in the R1, it's now, instead of 20 feet, it's 15. And the same in the R2 and R2 zone, because you have duplexes, they're just 2 units. And then in the R3 zone, it's 10 feet, which would normally be like a landscape area or maybe a fence separating the parking that's for an apartment complex type of development. But if you see below that, garages and other accessory structures need to be 20 feet back. And the basic thing on that is if that garage door is 20 feet back, it provides a driveway that's 20 feet long that a standard vehicle usually could be parked there without blocking the sidewalk.
So the actual living room can be closer than the garage?
Correct. And it's more to just provide a good parking pad for parking cars outside of a garage.
Yeah.
Anything shorter, they're out in the driveway apron, out in the street. So that's why there's a differentiation there. And all these little changes were in section 4, that when we get to the final approval of this, there used to be these development standard statements after the table that were these items that could just be a numeric amount in the table as opposed to a sentence saying, well, if you do this or that, you could do this or that. So I moved those, struck all those out, so this whole subsection C below, what table is this, 4B, will be struck out from the record, and everything's been brought up and integrated into the table in a numeric amount, the minimum unit size, setbacks. And it looks like my minimum lot size didn't take in the R1 zone, right now the minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet, because a lot of the standard lots in the center part of town, and
Right.
even those west of 10th, are generally 60 by 125, which gets you 6,250 square foot lots. Like almost every single lot is that size. And that fits under the density allowance of the R1 zone, which is 7 units per acre, but there's very little room to maximize 7 units per acre. So there was a sub-standard item that said there can be lots of 5,000 square feet as long as the overall density stays under the allowed density of 7 units per 7 units per acre. So that would change as well down to 5,000. That is matched by the R2 zone, which is 5,000. So there'll be some consistency between R1s and R2s. It's just that R1s are gonna be more single family, R2s are gonna be duplex oriented. So that's the main thing there for the removing minimum unit size and the setbacks. And then the third one, which is the definition of family. It's not so much saying what a family is, it's just that family is one of the things that's under the anti-discrimination laws, age, race, all that. Overly rejecting someone who wants to rent or buy because they have 1 kid, 5 kids, whatever, or trying to figure out what their family dynamic is. It's more of a, we just copied and pasted the best I could of, it's not overly defined on the state level, but I took some of the decisions, if you will, of what they say a family is. And it doesn't actually necessarily have to have kids. A couple is a family. So, that's
It's
what
a
we did
general
there.
term, it's not a definition.
Correct, and it's not saying, oh, this is with kids or without kids, it's not about that. It's just, being more consistent with all the different court cases that have happened when a family has been discriminated against.
Yeah.
Because if you do a search, feel free to search it at home, it's all about the court cases, and, you can't discriminate against those folks if you're a landlord or selling property or whatever it may be. So that's the need for the definition there, and every city that's gone through the housing element process, this has been one of their programs, if they don't have a family definition, or if it's an older one that's talking about kids or no kids kind of definition. And then the last program is 5N, which is regarding the residential care facilities. It's a general term for all things, whether it's care for children, adults, seniors. It's a really small term covering a whole lot of categories of residential care. So that's why, the last section in the draft ordinance, right now it has no edits to it, but we had, dependent housing as a category or a term. That needs to be changed and updated to what the state law says, but the law is so big and broad on this. I need a little more time on it, so this is probably gonna get detached out of this at the later date when we actually act on this. And it's probably gonna be its own thing.
Okay.
Because in the housing element, it also talks about group homes and, community care facilities, and those are in the definitions that are being amended as well with this ordinance. But the broadness of residential care facilities and what it covers adoption facilities as well, or foster care homes and things like that. So there's so many subcategories of it that, need to figure out how to cover it all, leave stuff out, but it references back to the state law whenever we come across someone wanting to establish one of these here locally. I mean, the ARC is classified as one of these. Alpha House is a community care facility, emergency shelter. So there's just so many categories that it's, need to make sure it's covered, but not to the nth degree, because we only have 2 facilities. We're not a bigger, larger city that could have all 22 defined community care facilities. So, we have the definitions in, but now I need to amend this section 6-12-14, which is more of the development standards of what a facility operator would have to go through and, prove on their part being a licensed facility. Or if there's gonna need to be 2 or 3 or 4 different sections in, the code now that will cover the most common types, I guess you could say. So I'm still working on that part, but I have the other parts of including it into the allowed uses table for the residential and commercial sections. And then the definitions are in as well, based on the programs that were drafted on the draft housing element. But this community care facility that will amend the dependent housing is kind of the up in the air one that will probably get removed and delayed to a later, much later meeting once I figure everything out with it. And we start coming through and adopting all these code changes. So I will leave my presentation at that, and, I'm open for any questions you may have.
Okay, open it up to the commission. Anybody have any questions?
Setbacks on the sides are still 5 feet, basically?
Yes, the sides and rear stayed the same,
5 feet, okay.
yeah.
Would you repeat that, please? Side yards?
The side yards are still 5 feet and rear yards are 5. R3 I think might be 10. It's just, it's assumed that there's gonna be some sort of buffer to the adjacent property, and, when it comes to R3,
Okay.
it's wider, but R1 and R2, it's 5 on the sides and the back.
We used to allow 10% of the lot width if the lot was not 50 feet. Is that still in the code?
That wasn't in this code. It may have been changed before I got here when they did the overhaul in 2010.
I don't recall that.
Yeah.
I would like to entertain that we provide that, because it's very difficult for some of these people to develop with a 5 foot side yard setback, because that requires 10 feet out of sometimes a 35-foot lot, or a 37.5-foot lot that has been created by us in the past. So I'd like us to consider putting that back in at a 10%.
Well, I think it'd probably be
lot
something
width.
else where it'd be a defined, measurement as instead of 10%, in that, because most other cities that do have the real dense single family or a lot of smaller lots, I think they push it to where they need a firewall. So it refers back to more of the building code on that distance, because once you're within 6 feet of each other, you start having 1 hour firewalls and 2 hour and all that, so we could probably do a reference to
I remember
a building
building-
code distance.
Orange County had a lot of,
The coastal
I think there were
housing and all that.
25-foot lots.
Yeah,
And we wound up having to still put a house on it, you know, Balboa Island, Newport Island, that kind of stuff. So if we can look at that. The other question I had is, I apologize for being late, but I came in on the setback requirements of 10, 15, and 10. No, 15, 15, and 10. What happens to the rear alley entrance to a garage? What's the requirement there?
so since that's not an occupied structure, we do allow getting as close as, I think it's either 3 feet or 30 inches, which is another building code
Okay.
call
That's-
out because
I
of
just
the
wanted to
opening of
make
the
sure
door.
that that hadn't changed.
Yeah, the garages can be closer because they're not occupied.
Okay.
I'd say on the side setback, if someone wants a building, they can come to us and maybe we can do an exemption for them, even if we don't do a overall, but like, okay, well, if you want to do it, let's make a design, get a,
Well,
do what we gotta do to be fire
I've been
code
fairly
and work with
friendly
them.
with variances, not quite as letter of the law of what some might consider when you apply a variance. If they're providing something like a better construction type on that wall, you know, getting those
Yeah, it's-
firewalls near a property line. type of deal.
sometimes it's wiser to do a zero lot line and put the side yard over and create that firewall on the property.
And if that's their design, we could come forward with something where they're showing how they're, because that's the purpose of setbacks. The building code community has created this 10-foot separation, so that's how you got 5 on one property, 5 on the other. You got your 10 feet between structures. But then they also talk about garages and other accessory structures that aren't occupied. They could get closer to a property line as long as they don't have an opening. But a garage usually has a garage door, so that brings it back to the 30 or 36 inches. That's why you'll see all the garages along our alleys are a little bit set back.
Right.
It's that 30 to 36 inch distance that's in the building code, because it has an opening, the door. But if you see some of the garages that have a broadside to the alley with no doors or windows.
They can be almost
it's very
right on top of
close.
it.
It's
I'm
probably-
assuming it's for fire hazard though. right?
Correct. Anything with an opening.
So you can
brings
get
the
out,
fire in or shoots
egress.
the fire out,
Yeah.
yeah.
So-
So we can look into those more. We don't quite have that urban or coastal community type thing, but there
Right.
are some narrow lots that could probably benefit from a little bit of a, allowance on the setbacks, whether that is in a variance type process or whatever it may be to allow that in, or some other statement. I'll look into that.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate it. Thank you for your answer.
I think we do need sort of a generous variance. I was
Right.
just thinking of it's on Second, the house that burned down on Second and Woodrow,
There are the tiny
That thing is-
postage stamp lots, yes.
right? It's such a postage size that if you gave all the setbacks, you'd be building an outhouse. I mean, it's,
Right.
so we need to have that for sure. A question I had was that we have you were planning on redoing the convalescent care, or are we leaving it at because that fits the current definition of the code?
That's what I have to dig into as well. I didn't notice, in the sections I've read through so far in the health and safety code on it, hasn't been so much on that. It's been on the group homes. There's a really robust area regarding, places that handle adoptions and foster children, all that stuff.
Okay.
It's like trying to get through all the pages to figure out, it's important, but how do we refine that down to, how do we quickly and succinctly define probably the most likely facilities to be established here? You know, we have a couple examples with Alpha and the ARC facility. But just your basic, folks that take in children, that's why I have the basic thing where it's at that threshold of 6 or fewer. They're generally just allowed. There's no business license, no home
Right.
lock, nothing. If they're having 7 kids, 7 adults or more, that's when they might need a home occ or some other process involved with that. And then it expands from there, the different types of child and adult and senior care that comes out of facilities like these. We don't have enough examples here where we could mold it around what we have, and that kind of guides you, so we're kind of just trying to comply with the state, and it's quite the novel to read through in the state code, so I'm getting through it, but by the time we get to the final stage on this, I'll be able to explain it better, and again, it most likely will get detached from a lot of this. This grouping wasn't necessarily grouped in the housing element, they were just the next 4 in a row and unrelated to the next 4 after that, so I kind of pushed this through to today to start discussing it and making sure it's in your minds for when we come back with the final adoption of this.
Well, it's the problem with a code that keeps trying to cover everything.
Yes.
And, I can remember, you might even too, that in law school, there was a case on whether or not a grandmother and her grandson was a family. And that's your first line practically in here. And then since
the old
then, it's been
definition.
accreted more and more things that make a family, so
Each
it's
case, yeah.
I don't envy the person who reads through all that, so
Yeah.
good luck on that, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, then we'll move on to item 4, which is the planning director report.
Yes, thank you again, Chairman Livingston. First, I'll just say I hope everybody had a good Christmas, good New Year, every other holiday in between. Hanukkah started late, so hope everybody had a safe one and healthy one as well. I know there's various illnesses going around right now, so stay safe with that. But to update from our last meeting on December 4th, we had the follow-up workshop on the housing element on December 12th. Well attended. We had a fair amount of Spanish speakers, so we were able to utilize a newly contracted translator. That went very well. It was well attended. And we had a follow-up meeting with HCD as well. I think, again, they've gotten through a lot of the more urbanized parts of the state with their housing elements that they've become more and more available, which has been great. So we're working away on getting the edits done that they've asked for. It's kind of expanded a little bit since we had that discussion, and we've had the holidays in between. So I'll be meeting with our consultant in the next week or two to nail down the last stuff, and when we send this next draft out, the state has 60 days to review that, so it's 2 months out from whenever we send that.
That
So
starts the
if
clock
we do it on the
running.
15th of January, it's not till the 15th of March,
Okay.
until we hear from them. So there's that part with the housing element. Working on getting the update to the ADU plans, because we also had the economic development workshop to go over those. The one defined thing that came out of that meeting was to keep the ADU units that we're gonna put together pre-approved plan packages together are essentially 1 bedroom and smaller units, so about 510 square feet and smaller. So it essentially just adds 1 bedroom to the overall residence of the property, so the electrical need, this water need, the sewer need, doesn't add another 1,200 square feet, to the maximum unit of ADUs. So, working with the architect to get 1 bedroom and studio options as what we're gonna be providing, as options for most of the property, because we also saw there's space on some, but not all. So also keeping it small would, generally help more properties than having larger units, pre-approved.
I think it's
So-
especially true in the center of the city.
Yeah, that's part of our focus, but they did a sample of properties over, west of 10th and then also, Parkview. Cause they have the least amount of space in the back, so, hopefully whatever we come up with, maybe they'll be able to attach that as opposed to detached, but, we'll see when we get there, when I get the next, draft of the plans, which should be shortly. We'll probably have another economic development, hopefully by the end of the month, to see this, and then we'll work on a package that will be put on the city website so people can read through of what, there's still a plan check process involved. Because one thing that's not gonna happen or be part of the plans is a specific roof structure. It'll allow it to, whether somebody wants to do more of a, I guess you just, well, more stick-built, or if they're gonna, pay for the, pre-assembled trusses.
Oh, yeah.
That get shipped, so leaving that option to their contractor that they work with, because some prefer the trusses, some may do their own framing for the roof with the rafters and the joists and all that. One thing they are recommending, though, is to provide more space for the individual, is to do more of the, I think they call it a box truss, where it creates a little bit of attic space, where you could put, you know, maybe a 4x8 sheet of plywood to store Christmas stuff or whatever up in there. Because they were trying to maximize the space with the kitchen space and bedrooms and
Makes
all that.
sense.
So, that's a suggestion, but there won't be any structural calcs with the roof, but will be for the box of the, living space.
Okay.
So we're hoping to put a whole package together, a whole homeowner's guide to what are ADUs, why we did this, and how it's gonna work with these three options, or they could go with their own with something else they found out there as a ADU for their property, so. Those are my three items.
Okay. Move on to item 5. Does the city attorney have anything to tell us?
I do not this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then we're on to item 6, commissioner comments. Any comments from the commission?
Great Christmas party for the city. That was fun. Yeah, just couldn't stop winning. That was the hardest part about gambling. And had to give it all back. Yeah, have had a good year and wish you all the best.
Anyone else?
I just, I'm glad to see everyone here. We survived the holidays. I imagine we all had good holidays. The Christmas parade was a big success again. And New Year's was pleasant, so welcome back.
Yes. Just kind of an observation, we were talking about the setbacks. The area where the fires are in LA happens to have been 1920s and 30s housing. And so they're experiencing, well, they've lost at least 1,000 units now. They're experiencing the issues that drove those changes, because a lot of those buildings have either no setbacks, no firewalls. I mean, they're just waiting to be burned down in some cases.
Yes, the old timers from here, when a fire would start here, they would go 4 houses away
And start wetting.
and start pushing the houses over to lay them down so they wouldn't catch fire. I wonder if perhaps maybe down there they shouldn't go 4 houses away and demolish them, because they're going to burn.
Yeah.
It would be nice too if they had water pressure.
Yeah,
That's
apparently
the big
just
thing
killing them
down
right
there.
now.
They have dry hydrants.
And apparently the mayor is someplace else, Africa.
He should stay there.
She just, sent out a terrible tweet on some of it. So anyways, it's just,
To piggyback on what I just said about the dry fire hydrants, I appreciate our fire protection, because they're out there looking after us, checking our hydrants, testing them on a regular basis, so we don't have to worry about that. We have a lot of fires for various reasons, but we don't have a problem of a dry hydrant.
and frankly, given the nature of the housing, I'm pretty impressed with how few fires have not gotten out of hand and hit more than one home.
Oh, yeah. Well, some of them are stacked kindling, so.
Yeah, so I agree. I think we're very well served by our first responders and
Yeah,
everything.
they bust a hump, that's for sure.
Okay, well, now let's move on to something where we pick a representative to the city council.
Item 7, I would like to see you do that, Jerry.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, all in favor? No. Yes, I'll be glad to do it.
Okay?
I enjoy going to the meetings anyway, so it's not like I'm
Well, you're in
disadvantaged.
good company at those meetings. We have a very pleasant council.
Yes. Last night was fun to see all the Blue Kiwanis
Yeah,
people there for their 100th anniversary. We should congratulate them on that.
There we go.
I understood Mayor Nor concluded the meeting by adjourning the Kiwanis.
Yes, he did. It reminds me, in school, if you take political science, you're almost always going to be required to read Alexis de Tocqueville. And one of the things he talks about at that time period was the self-help nature of all the small groups in towns. We still have that in Taft. We have that with our Lions Club and our Kiwanis, our Rotary, our Seroptimus.
Masons.
Many others. I mean, just the fact is that's a blessing we still have in small towns. Having lived in San
It's like
Diego
that
for a
every
long time, I
house.
don't know that I would have ever run into somebody from a Kiwanis club or a Rotary. I'm sure they still are service clubs, but the nature of it here in town makes it a,
I used to run into them often, you know, when I was living in Los Angeles. It wasn't until we moved here, though, that either Kathy, my wife, or I joined. And it's a wonderful undertaking that those people do.
Yes.
It's
Kathy was
it's a
actually
great
the
service.
first woman to join the Taft Kiwanis.
she was?
Yep.
Really? Well, I just, I think that was great to celebrate it, and I think we're blessed in this town to have
Yep,
so
we're very
many service
fortunate.
organizations that contribute to the quality of life here. I think it's one of the reasons that people like living here is that they have so many opportunities both for service and to be served. So with that, I think we'll just go ahead and have a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Deal.
Thank you.